Attention sports teams. Let us introduce you to the best fan engagement tool in the game, .vote. By getting a .vote web address for your team, you can allow fans to engage and interact with big-time decisions. In a single click, not only can fans make their opinions heard, but sports teams get a better understanding of their fans' interests. Keep your fans engaged. Simply visit GoDaddy.com today, type in the desired name of your web address, and let the voting begin.
The Giants put up a depressing performance on the most depressing day of the year. A betting scandal hits the UFC, and we talk some NBA with our buddy Kris Pursiainen. It's all straight ahead on a new episode of Gordon Damer on Sports. Hey, welcome into a fresh episode of Gordon Damer on Sports for this Tuesday, Election Day. Plenty to talk about after a very busy sports weekend with the Bills taking down the Chiefs in Week 9 in the NFL and all that craziness. The Dodgers winning the World Series the way they did. Congratulations to them. But we have another betting scandal to talk about. We'll talk some NBA as the season now underway. We'll talk with our buddy Kris Pursiainen, who is all over everything NBA related. You know, I ease into the NBA season. Kris dives in with both feet forward. And I'm telling you right now, he's already kind of growing on social media and everything. But this is a guy in a couple of years, if not sooner, you're going to say, this guy's everywhere. And I remember him. When I first saw him, it was on Gordon Damer on Sports. So we'll talk with Kris coming up. We'll get into the betting scandal that has hit the UFC. But we got to talk a little bit of football because I don't know if you feel like me, but this past weekend, to me, is the most depressing weekend of the year. The year where you set the clocks back is always depressing because you know now, especially here in the Northeast, you are looking at 6 months of sunset at basically 4:30 in the afternoon. We are now facing 6 months of bad road, of bad weather, of depressing times. And look, there are things you have to look forward to in the late fall and in the winter. You have maybe Thanksgiving or the holidays or New Year's. And we should have good football to watch, right? The most important football games of the year to watch. But here, unfortunately, in New York, we have the New York Giants. And it would be fitting that the Giants, on the most depressing day of the year, put together their most depressing performance of the season, losing to the 49ers 34-24 in a game that was overtaken by Niner fans in New Jersey, and a game that, let's be honest, 10 points, it was not that close. So the Giants now have lost 3 in a row, and this one felt different. Against the Broncos, it was anger, blowing that lead, that performance in the fourth quarter. Fans were enraged. Last week against the Eagles, it was frustration because you lost some questionable calls early. You lose Cam Scatterbo for the season. But this week felt like resignation. This week felt like acceptance because the Giants allowed the worst rushing team in football to come into their house and run the ball directly down their throat. There was no fight. There was no pushback. And you would think after the last couple of weeks, with all the talk about how disappointing the great vaunted Giant defense has been, that there would be some professional pride from the players to show that, you know what, we're mad as hell and we're not going to take it anymore. But yet that didn't happen. Instead, the Niners, playing with a backup quarterback in Mac Jones, did whatever they wanted to do. Christian McCaffrey left wide open on multiple plays. On the first drive, he had his longest run of the season so far. Again, the Niners were the worst running team in football. But don't worry, the Giants made up for not taking care of the run game by not covering anybody in the pass game either. Mac Jones looked like Joe Montana. He did not have an incompletion until the third quarter. This is a team, for all the injuries the Giants have, the Niners have way more. And I kind of focused on this before the game. This was a swing game. You know, like you have swing states on Election Day? This was a swing game. Giants win this game. You can find some other wins on the schedule. You can start to look at things more optimistically because of the play of Jackson Dart. But when you don't win this game, it's very hard to find any other wins. And forget win, be competitive. They were dominated by the 49ers, traveling across the country, playing with their backup quarterback. This game was never really close, and it was just more of the same. You've seen this movie before. In fact, with the Giants, you see this movie every single year. Third straight year, they have started 2-7. Third straight year, the season is over before Thanksgiving. Another season where they have planes flying over the Meadowlands and MetLife saying, fire the coach, fire the GM, and a building filled with 49er fans. This was not Eagle fans making the trip up north. This is not Cowboy fans who are everywhere. I know the Niners have a large fan base, but the Niners are not having some incredible season that fans are jumping on the bandwagon. This was mostly Giant fans accepting their team is going no place and selling their tickets. And in many ways, this year is worse because when you're 2-7 and you have Tommy DeVito as your quarterback, that's kind of to be expected. When you have one shining light at quarterback, the most important position in sports, and you're still 2-7, that's a problem. So it gets the feeling like at some point it turns from anger to apathy. And Giant fans have kind of checked out. And who can blame them after another season of this? But as bad as Sunday was, I think it's actually good news. And it's good news from this point of view. You know, and we talked about this in the pod before, John Mara desperately does not want to go and find another coach. He desperately does not want to go and find another general manager. The last thing he wants to do is admit that he was wrong and be forced to start over again a year after drafting their young quarterback. But this kind of performance that they put up on Sunday, and with what's looking like it's ahead with still the Packers and the Lions and all these games that they're not going to win, you can't hide it anymore. You can't go out last year if you're John Mara and tell them, you know what, I'm fed up and my patience is just about used up. Go draft your franchise quarterback and then still be one of the worst teams in football. And that's what the Giants are. If the draft were to happen right now, they would be picking 5th. This is rock bottom, and it might still get worse. But this is actually good news for Giant fans because John Mara and Giant ownership can no longer be fooled. This right here is showing you can't fool anyone. It's broken. Everyone can see it. And it's consistent year in and year out, and it's got to be fixed. So Brian Daboll's days are numbered. Joe Shane's days are numbered. You need a fresh start. You need a new voice. And it's time for you to really have that smack you in the face and accept it and stew on it. You need, in tough times, a moment of clarity. And that's what the Giants got on Sunday against the 49ers. There's no kidding yourself anymore. This is not working. So thank Brian Daboll and Joe Shane for finding Jackson Dart and show them the door and go find the best coach and the best GM to help Jackson Dart. This is not the group. And now you have to go and search again. And based on the results, it's always possible that John Mara can't find the right person. It's possible that John Mara screws it up again, but at least that is an unknown. And what you have right now is a known quantity, and it adds up to the worst team in football, even with a bright light at the most important position in sports. Okay, the NBA season is well underway and time to get a little gauge of things going on. No one better to discuss it with than our next guest, Kris Pursiainen, who is an NBA reporter for, of course, Locked On Knicks. He's everywhere. He's all over social media. He does everything. Kris, give us the resume quickly before I butcher it all.
No, yeah, I report on the NBA and the WNBA for Clutch Points, and I'm a co-host now officially of Locked On Knicks, the daily Knicks podcast. So basketball episode of basketball writing. So good combination, Gordon. Great to be on. Thanks for having me back.
Yes, absolutely. Look, it takes me a little while to get into the NBA season. I have to wait for the baseball season to kind of end, and then I kind of ease into it. You're into it from jump, so that's why I wanted to talk to you. You're all over the Knicks, obviously. Has the panic subsided? We're recording this before the Wizards game tonight, but has the panic subsided after ending the 3-game losing skid and everybody's back on track?
Yeah, it's funny because you can't even blame the New York sports fan. 9 times out of 10, you can go, oh, the crazy New York sports fan is just incorrigible. And it's impossible to satisfy and this and this and that. And they're like, we just want to go 500. And, but this time the team did something that it hasn't done since before I was born. I was born in 2002. In the year 2000 is when they last went to the Eastern Conference Finals. So when you have a coach lead the team to that height and then fire him, you set yourself up for the over analysis, for the scrupulation over every little thing, every little decision. Mike Brown is kind of the worst, and not worst like for him or for the Knicks, but honestly, for like the media cycle, the worst kind of coach for this in the sense that he is not going to be like Tom and come in and treat game one of the regular season like it's extra innings of game seven of the World Series. So Mike is going to use this start of the regular season to experiment, to collect data. Collecting data is the key word of the first like quarter of the Knicks season. They're just collecting data. And so they're starting this guy, and then they're starting this guy, and then they're playing this guy and not playing this guy, and then they're playing the other guy and not playing the first guy. And they're trying stuff out. So things aren't going to work, and that's natural. The point is to figure out what does. And the point is to not care, and I know it's hard, but to not care so much about the wins and losses. Because if you want, I could put it to you like this. Tom Thibodeau had a lot of wins and a lot of big wins, but the organization decided ultimately that his process, the process that brought upon those results, was not worth committing to going forward. So, in search of better results, they brought in someone with a different process. So now this is kind of just about Mike Brown is feeling the team out. The team's feeling him out. He said last night to reporters, he said, yeah, we've been bad last couple games offensively. And part of that's on me. It's because I'm doing so many different substitution patterns that these guys can't get into a rhythm. And it's like, well, professional shooters are supposed to be able to shoot no matter who's on the court. But that's a pretty, I don't know about refreshing, but that is a stark difference from anything you would have heard last year. So, yes, the panic has subsided because people sometimes just need to see one go through the net. And I think last night against the Bulls on Sunday night, evening up the season series against them in the way that they did, which was a decisive win that they kind of took their foot off the gas at the end and still won by double digits. That felt good for fans. So I think they're all right. I think that their pearls are less tightly clutched.
And the season is way too early to start judging things by the fact that the Bulls prior to that game were undefeated, right? Like the Bulls were 5-0. That tells you how ridiculously early on in the season it is. But look, the Knicks, when you make the move that you did last year and fire Tibbs basically as soon as the season ended, what you're basically saying is that you feel like the coach was the problem, that the coach somehow prevented this team from reaching the level that you expect it to be. So when you go into the next season, the regular season is not how this season is going to be judged. It's going to be judged on the postseason, but the regular season, I think for fans is seen as this is supposed to be a breeze now, and it's not going to be a hard time. We're not going to have to worry about anything until we get to the postseason, and it just shows you that that's not true. If things don't look right, people are still going to panic even in the regular season.
And it doesn't matter what the context is too, right? Like Tom Thibodeau didn't have Mitchell Robinson available for the first 40, 50 games of last season. And that was a continuous sticking point. Like that was like, well, we can't criticize this team from a fair place because they haven't had their starting center. And now it's like Mitchell Robinson's, coming in and out of games, and he's missing the first several games of the season with load management for a totally non-injury that he totally did not sustain during what was totally not a preseason game. He was definitely not the only starter to not play in the second half of that game. Like it was so obvious what happened. But like Mike Brown has this same problem where his starting center is out and everyone's like, starting who? Come on, you got a bench now, right? Come on, go use the bench. Come on. Like
Yeah.
you're seeing none of the patience. And it's funny because Tibbs was in his, it wasn't his first or second year as Knicks coach. Mike Brown's in his first year. You'd think fans would understand to give it a little time, but no, it's like, dude, we don't care who's hurt. Go win.
Yeah. Have you seen? Look, we just admitted it's ridiculously early. Has there been anything about the way that Mike Brown has approached the season that you think, okay, that's something that we have to pay attention to moving forward? And has he separated himself in any way to you clearly from the way that Tibbs handled things?
I don't know about pay attention over the course of the season. I'm maybe still at the point where I'm also just collecting data and feeling things out and seeing what's going on. I think the one thing I'd watch out for, and this is, I guess, less about Brown, Gershon Yabusele, like a big offseason addition for this Knicks team. They gave him the mid-level exception. It was like 6 million ish over 2 years, player option in that second year, and he played a total of 5 minutes in those two games against Chicago. In the second game, he only logged two first quarter minutes, and he was done for the night. So something to keep an eye on. It looks like Landry Shamet is like certainly ahead of him in the rotation, which I wasn't expecting. Um, and when it comes to clearly setting himself apart from Thibodeau, I think it's just the whole process. Like he doesn't care if they lose a game if he found something valuable out about his team, I think is the best way to put it.
Interesting. How about the Josh Hart nerve issue in his hand? How concerning is that to you?
I don't know. He can't feel his ring or pinky finger at times. Can't be good,
Yeah.
but he's playing well. So I guess what do I know? We'll see. It seems like he's not afraid of any long-term damage that can be incurred here. So he's going to play through it. We'll see how it goes.
Yeah. Let's go around the NBA. Has anything outside, leave the Knicks alone. What has jumped out to you in the first week plus of the season that you say, wow, that's kind of surprising to me?
Wemby is so tall. He's not 7'4". He has to be taller. Dylan Harper is super polished. He looks like a veteran and he's a rookie, but he's getting to the paint at will. He's finding teammates. He's making the right reads and he's scoring too. The Milwaukee Bucks, maybe are my favorite takeaway from the start of the season. At our mutual place of work, we have an old NBA Jam arcade setup, and I think this Bucks roster is like straight out of that era of basketball. They've got some guards that are fun and feisty, but that team revolves around two 7-footers. And I think that is so awesome, just conceptually, but also like you look at the way they play. These are not normal 7-footers. It's Giannis Antetokounmpo and Miles Turner. Giannis is a real mid-range threat. Turner is a real three-point threat. So you see these guys learning how to play together. It's pretty interesting. Ryan Rollins is the name to keep an eye on out there. 6'4" guard, can pressure the rim, is making pull-up threes this season, is a good passer, has good physicality, can get 2 feet into the paint at will. What stops him from being a star, frankly, he doesn't have an elite handle of the basketball. He does not have elite like playmaking in the sense of he doesn't make a pass that you didn't even imagine was going to be there. But he makes the right one when it's open. And Ryan Rollins is keeping a lot of stuff together. And Cole Anthony's been good too. Shout out to a New York City hoops prodigal son in Cole Anthony. Giannis and Turner, two 7-footers, and everything on that team revolves around them pressuring the basket, them running pick and roll with each other, Gordon, and Turner popping out to the top of the 3-point arc and hitting shots from there. Like that team is kind of exactly what I would use to describe modern basketball to like a coach from the 70s or something that isn't with us anymore. I'd be like, hey, check this out. The two best guys on this team are the two big men. And he'd be like, yeah, duh, of
Right.
course. Of course the
But
center.
not the way you think.
And then I'm like, okay, and now I'm gonna hit play, and your mind is gonna melt. He's like, wait, what? He's allowed to dribble outside of the paint? Hold it. Why is he dribbling at all? And it's awesome. So they've totally flipped the sport on its head. I'm sure Dr. Naismith is smiling somewhere, seeing these two twin towers just get their game off, and for a team that everyone kind of wrote off. Because Giannis is gonna want out and he's not gonna try. That's not Giannis. Giannis is the kind of guy who even out of spite or stubbornness gives you his absolute all. If he feels like it's a last stand, so you're getting it, and
Yeah.
they've been awesome. So that's
And
a
maybe a
team in
one
each
seed in the
conference.
East this year.
That's tough because Cleveland is so good, and New York is good, but Milwaukee might have a spite season in them, for any
Mm-hmm.
any Curb Your Enthusiasm people, like a spite store. This could be a
Mm-hmm.
spite season for the Milwaukee Bucks. Just hey, you wrote us off. Hey, you thought we stunk. You thought we wave and stretched Dame just to convince Giannis to stay another year. We're pathetic and small and sad. Watch this. I could see them finishing in the third seed. I could see them getting as high as the third seed. I was very loud in the offseason that the Orlando Magic didn't scare me the way that they did other people.
Mm-hmm.
But I was wrong about where I diverted that attention. I said the Hawks would be that third team in the East. I said the Hawks would be the team to watch out for. That Trae Young had never had a stretch five before in his career, and now he's got arguably the best one in the league in Kristaps Porzingis. They're not looking great to start, my man. So
Yeah.
Milwaukee might come for that third spot. I would still say it's Cleveland and New York on top, just because um, they have a top 10 player on their roster the way that Milwaukee does, but the rest of the team is a lot more, cushioned than the Bucks. But then again, people are wrong about things all the time, myself included.
Yeah.
And I think Ryan Rollins and Torian Prince, like I think they have enough players in Milwaukee to have a real team that can make some noise. I don't think I see them making a deep playoff run because their lack of wing and guard depth might hurt them the second, the injury bug comes knocking. All of a sudden, they're playing guys that aren't necessarily ready. Um, but for right now, at full strength, I love this Bucks team. I think they look good.
Yeah. How about Wembanyama? Has he entered clearly? I kind of thought it was going to take him a little bit more time to kind of enter that MVP conversation, but at least so far this year, he looks like he's made a gigantic leap.
Yeah, Gordon. And I got to say, I think that MVP conversation starts with everyone on the team besides Victor. I didn't love that Spurs roster going into this year. Harrison Barnes, Keldon Johnson, Devin Vassell, Carter Bryant, those guys all play the same position. You add in Stefan Castle, who now plays that position as well, because Dylan Harper and De'Aaron Fox have pushed him down from being a 1 and a 2 to a 2 and a 3. It's all just nominal. It's modern basketball. They're out there passing, shooting, and dribbling the same. But I didn't love this Spurs roster. I thought it was clunky. I thought they needed to consolidate. I was talking about Lauri Markkanen as someone who they should be willing to lose a trade for if it means getting him in the building and just consolidating some of their talent. But Wemby is shining, and he's making this team look pretty good. So I would say so far Wemby's definitely in the MVP conversation. I think you have your usual suspects of Jokic and Shea. They are always going to have cases. Giannis is making a case too. Like his averages right now, obviously it's small sample size
Sure.
theater. But like his averages right now are still laughable. I believe it's something like 35, 13, and 7. And it's like those are the things where it's like you look back in the history books at the seasons that Will averaged 50 and you're like, something wasn't right that year. I don't know what it was, but there's no way that they played that many normal basketball games and he averaged 50 points a game. But like Giannis is having one of those years right now. And Wemby's having one of those years. I think you look all around at these stars, they're having these major years. Victor Wembanyama's stats as well, like are good enough right now to be in that MVP conversation. So I would say Giannis and Wemby are the two guys that are the non-usual suspect. And Giannis should be a usual suspect, but I think
Right.
that's kind of a knock on Milwaukee's front office that he's not one. Because we know it's not a knock on him as a player. But yeah, no, I think Wemby's up there. I think he's up there. Where I do pump the brakes a little is on the conversation of just how good he is, because I think there are people willing to be like, "Hey, we've never seen this before, and we need to have conversations about if we even know how to evaluate it properly." That I agree with. The notion of, "Oh, we've never seen this, so this is the best player in the league," and it's just, it's all about just us taking time to adjust to it. He's already number one. That's a little, it's a little coming on a little strong for my liking, but to say he's a top 10 player in the NBA over the last 2 seasons, last year and 6 games of this year is not false. I don't think I was gonna say it's not an exaggeration, but I just think it's true. I think he has been top 10 over these last 88 games or whatever you wanna call it.
Also out west, do you think the Thunder challenge the all-time win record this year, considering the start they've gotten off to?
Man, I feel like everyone had them regressing in the win column this year because
Yeah.
it felt natural. That's how statistics can work and things. Well, they said screw you all. I I think that that record might be safe, only because the Thunder strike me as the kind of team that utilize that process first style of thinking that the Knicks are trying to move a little closer towards right now, which is we don't care about the outcome against Sacramento on Tuesday night in February. We care about what we feel about our team going into April. We care about the outcome on Friday night on national TV against the whoever is in the first round. We care about, um, my brain says yes, they'll win all the games they play, but somehow it's my emotions telling me, you know what, man, you might need to chill a little bit because they're probably going to take some time to figure some things out that may not may not win them the most games, but it might make them the best team going into the playoffs, which I'm sure they'd rather be.
Right. When you've already won a championship, especially, you realize that that's the only thing that your season truly is going to be judged by. So the best thing that the regular season record has going for it, not ever changing, is that the regular season is not how we judge anything anymore, right?
Yeah, it's a testing grounds. It's a lab.
Hmm.
Get in the lab and experiment with what you think would work best for your ball club. And if something doesn't work, you kind of just don't care.
Right.
Obviously, if something doesn't work and you need to make a roster shakeup or something, that's different. But like, if you have two players that are both good for your team that don't play well together, figure that out now. I
Hmm.
think of the Knicks last season. DeLon Wright played about 240 regular season minutes for the Knicks last year. And then you got to the playoffs, and he was one of the 10 most important guys on the roster. Um, Guys, probably not the time to figure that one out.
Right.
Like, game 96 of the season was not when to realize that it was, so
Hmm.
um this is what the opposite of that looks like is being willing to mess up. You will, I can guarantee it. You will never see a movie you don't like if you watch your favorite movie only for the rest of your life. But you're missing out on God knows how many new favorite movies or new favorite whatever. Like, you can go to a restaurant and get the same thing every time, and unless the cook's having a bad day, you're
Right.
never going to dislike it.
Yeah.
You'll like it every time. But I think that's also just no way to live. You got to be willing to watch a movie that stinks or have a meal that just you don't understand why people pay to eat that. And I think that in basketball terms can look like trying out some funky lineups. Mike Brown came out one of the first games of the season and played OG Anunoby at the center spot for a couple minute stretch. Like, first of all, hilarious. Second of all, like, yes, that is when to do that. That is
Hmm.
when to. Then Tom Thibodeau's Knicks played OG at center in the playoffs. And it was the first time they had done it. And they were like, hey, that Embiid guy, he looks pretty good against us today. Want to go do something about that? This is when to figure that all out.
Yeah. You talk about superstars maybe being on the move. How long before we start to hear Ja Morant rumors, you think?
Oh, I think we're hearing them.
Okay.
But that said, it's really just like smoke. It's noise. It's what. Listen, I'm half Finnish. Thomas Isalo, the new head coach over in Memphis, is Finnish, and if I had to take a wild guess, I would say that Isalo just this latest spat between them is Isalo not being able to get logic out of his mind. Finnish people have the number one education system in the world. They consume the most coffee per capita in the world. We are a determined bunch. And I think Isalo has winning first through ninth on his list of priorities. And any little thing, it seems, that feels like an impediment to that is something that needs to be dealt with. And it seems like it came out to Morant in the form of some harsh words that maybe neither side meant in the heat of the moment, but for John Morant to tell reporters after the game, basically like a kid telling their mom about an argument they just had with their dad. Like the reporters were like, "Well, what can the team do?" And Ja's like, "Well, if you ask him, and it's play me less. If you go ask him, he'll say they'd be better if I." It's like what? These are not your parents. Like these are like these are reporters asking you a question, and you're like, well, go ask dad. Go ask dad what he said. Like what? So I think Ja is a great player. I think Isola is a great coach, and I think these two guys are either going to work this out or they're not. But that said, in the modern NBA, when a coach and a player don't work something out, 9 times out of 10, one of them moves and it's not the player. So I don't know if the Grizzlies maybe will, look at this and say, hey, this is another head coach. Taylor Jenkins, we didn't think had a great control of the locker room. Isola was there, for that last year and now got in the head chair and we don't feel like he has great control over like at what point do you either decide that no one's going to have great control over the locker room and to change what's in the locker room or to move on from the coach? We'll see. But Memphis definitely like they have too much going their way to get this caught up in this. Jaren Jackson Jr. is really talented. Jalen Wells, the kid they drafted last year, looks good again. Like this is a nice young player. Cedric Coward, who they got in the first round this year, looks like Desmond Bain. So it's like, oh, congrats on the free 5 first-round picks that you got for replacing Desmond Bain with
Desmond Bain.
Desmond Bain. But like they got too much going their way. Like they got Zach Edey, they got Cedric Coward. They have some promising young talent, and they need to either take like Gigi Jackson and some salary and go get a veteran that's going to get in that locker room and cut the BS and get them focused on one thing, or they probably need to start looking at this core and realizing that it's not going to win them a championship. And I think they did that with the Desmond Bain trade. I think that was a loud acknowledgement from their front office that they clearly don't have the right mix of key foundational pieces. By removing the one of the three that I think everyone would agree is the best fit with the 29 other teams, to me says they're looking for either really specific pieces for these guys that they have in Ja and Triple J, or those wheels are getting greased for them to be on their way out too. So I would think the Grizzlies and Morant may not be together next as soon as next season.
Yeah.
But I also don't think it would be some situation where Morant demands out and the Grizzlies are trying to do everything they can to win without him. Like I think it would be the Grizzlies being like, "Hey, this was a good ride. We're gonna tank. Like we're gonna shut this down." So we'll see.
Yeah.
Hey,
like
Orlando
he's a
could use a point guard.
Yeah, that's true, right? There'll be a market for him, even if it's a distressed asset. There will be a market because he's just that talented, and they figure, you know what, we'll be able to make it work in a way that Memphis could not. How about VJ Edgecombe? How excited are you to see him break into the league and make the impact that he has so far?
Oh, stud. He looks great, and he looks like someone who definitely is having the kind of start to an NBA career that makes you feel a little silly for how you evaluated them in college. But I mean, VJ at Baylor, I was always impressed by him. I'm tweeting about him during March Madness and different things, but like I see now with hindsight how his game was so prepped to translate well to the pro level. And I think it's the athleticism helps him a lot, but it's also that jack of all trades he's got going for him where yes, he can dribble a little bit. Yes, he can shoot a little bit. Like he's not some master sniper or he doesn't have the ball on a string, but he's good enough at these things that he's able to be more than the sum of his parts out there on the floor. Such a nice jolt for Philadelphia. They had the same thing last year with Jared McCain. Hopefully you get both of these guys healthy and out there, and Tyrese Maxey as well, and hopefully you have a problem, which is we have too many good guards for minutes to go around. But also, I'm not sure that I really see that being a problem because Maxey, Edgecombe, and McCain, like That to me sounds great as the three best guards on a good team. So I think they can figure that out. The questions they're going to need to answer in Philadelphia have more to do with the veterans, with George and Embiid. What are you getting out of them at this point? What is the goal? Right, like Joel gets out there this season and he can score still, put out 20 points in a game, easily. And these, but like every fall, every tumble,
Yep.
you're like, oh my God, is that? And that's
You're holding your breath.
I'm
Yeah.
not saying that the viewer's emotions are the priority when it comes to someone uh living out their dream and doing what they love for work, and like there's that side of it too which needs consideration. But I would be remiss if I didn't mention that in the second apron era of this NBA, the most harmful thing you can have on your salary cap books is a max contract going to someone who doesn't necessarily play up to it.
Hmm.
You can take this back to before the second apron, when the New York Knicks traded Kristaps Porzingis because they felt that if they gave him a max contract, they would be paying a great young player who didn't really deserve that level of contract, and that it would be holding them back. That was the right move. As great as Kristaps' career turned out, it was the right move to kick that can down the road with regard to having good players. I worry that Philadelphia, with the second apron, with two supermax deals, pretty much in George and Embiid, um, I, yeah, that's really not good. And I don't know what team in the NBA would trade for Joel Embiid. Like
Yeah.
who
Who
that
would take that chance?
I think he's one of those situations where like everyone is jealous they don't have a player with the talent that he has. Everyone's also kind of relieved that they don't have him on their roster, that they don't need to be the ones making excuses or answering questions or hiding things from the media or whatever it is. Like I think there's almost something about admiring him from a distance where you can turn that channel off and then someone says, "Hey, put that channel on. He's got 31 at halftime." And you flip it on and he's still got it and it's awesome. And then someone texts you a couple months later and they're like, "Hey, this show is still great. Put it on." And you're like, "Oh yeah, I forgot about that. I'll check out an episode." When you have to watch every episode if you're a 76er fan, and a lot of it feels like filler or like the writers fell asleep halfway through, I can imagine it getting old quick. But from a distance it's great. I don't know what team wants to get up and close with
Hmm.
that contract.
Yeah.
So for Philadelphia, I really think that they are going to have this awkward psychological issue to deal with in their locker room of a time bomb of, hey, this half the locker room is just waiting for that half's deals to run out. Like I I I do think there might, that's something they might want to watch out for, because if Embiid and George, and listen, it's a great problem, I guess, in a sense, if your young players are so good that
Hmm.
they're making these guys look that bad, but also their contracts still get paid out regardless. So like, if I'm Philly, I am a little worried about my books.
Yeah.
But VJ Edgecombe has been a stud. Him and Dylan Harper have been the two rookies that I think should impress everyone the most thus far. And that's not anything against Cooper Flag. We just know that Coop has had a lot asked of him early on this Dallas team that started him at point guard in his first game of his NBA career. He started at point guard, and they drafted him as a 6'10" forward out of Duke. So that's not exactly,
Right.
I
Not
know
ideal.
I know the NBA is positionless now, but that
Yeah.
is that is
A lot to
stretching those
ask.
those ideals
Yes.
a little bit, right? So Flag is going out there and having like 3, 4, 5 turnover games, and you really can't blame him. But you can still admire what the guy in state in Dylan Harper is doing, what the guy in VJ Edgecombe over in Philly is doing. Those two look really good and really polished for first year players.
Kris, you're all over it, man. I appreciate it so much. Of course, you can check out Kris at Clutch Points, also the co-host for Locked On Knicks. Always a pleasure, Kris, to talk to you a little bit about the NBA, and I'm sure we'll be talking again pretty soon.
Now, Gordon, sounds like a plan. Thanks for having me on, and I appreciate you working with my schedule. I'm a about to go get dressed and ready to go cover another Knick game. So we'll see how this goes tonight.
Living the life, my friend. All right, I'll talk to you soon.
Remember college? Well, now, college is over, and here comes your student loan debt. Is your private student loan debt keeping you up at night? You really need to talk to YRefi. YRefi refinances distressed or defaulted private student loans that others won't touch. They can save you thousands of dollars and get you a custom payment that you can afford. And they don't care what your credit score is. Don't let private student loan debt ruin your life. Call YRefi today.
Okay, another day, another episode, and another betting scandal in sports. What else is new? We've already dealt with it with the NBA this year. Baseball's had its issues with it. And now the UFC, the latest league to be dealing with a betting scandal. It happened this past weekend. So here's what we know. And it probably would have gotten a lot more attention, but it happened the same night as the Game 7 of the World Series, so it didn't get the amount of attention it ordinarily would. But what we know is there was a bout between Isaac Delgarian and Yadier Delval. And on paper, Delgarian going in, heavy favorite, minus 270, which if you're not a bettor, that's a pretty sizable favorite that you expect that guy to take care of business. But then 30 minutes before the fight, something weird happened. All of a sudden, a flood of money, not just one bet, but multiple bets started to flood in against Delgarian. And we're talking about huge bets, enough action. I don't have the specific number because it's all these sports books, but it was enough to take the action from minus 270 down to minus 150. That is not a small swing in the time frame that we're talking about. That is a seismic shift, and it's the kind of movement that any sports book is going to look around and say, what the heck is going on here? And not shockingly enough, that's exactly what happened. Every major sports book took the fight down. No more action allowed because there was just too much suspicious money coming in against the favorite and coming in so fast. So this was, and also it was not just people betting against Delgarian. A lot of the bets specifically were for Delval to win the fight in the first round. So it was a very specific bet. One major operator, Hard Rock, reportedly got 5 separate large bets, all on Delval, all in round 1, all from different accounts. So that's not a coincidence. That's not somebody who's just feeling lucky. That is a major red flag that is basically on fire. So let's fast forward to the actual fight. Maybe it's just suspicion. Maybe it's just a weird coincidence. Well, Delgarian comes out, and let's just say he looks completely unmotivated for the fight. He gets taken down very easily, offers basically no resistance, and in a very short period of time, in the first round, he taps out. And the optics of it, after everything that went on, is awful. It certainly appeared like he was not even trying. So that obviously led to a backlash. Within minutes, UFC fans are all over social media saying that looked rigged, right? Like that looked like a fixed fight. And apparently the sports books were in agreement. Now, look, we don't know. We were just supposing here, but the sports books, William Hill, which is one of the biggest ones in the world, put out a statement saying that mobile customers with losing bets on that fight would receive cash credits within 24 hours. So a major sports book, again, one of the largest in the world, is refunding you for your losing bet. That's how you know something seriously went sideways here. That does not happen unless there's some major suspicious activity. And look, it just keeps, unfortunately, getting messier and uglier because Delgarian, the investigation by the UFC led to him being dropped already. So he's gone just like that. And reportedly, both the UFC and the Athletic Commission are investigating to see what happened, who knew what, because something stinks in Denmark, as they say. And to make matters worse, because the internet is forever. Like anything you put on the internet is there forever. So when all this stuff starts happening, people go to the internet and they find this interview that Delgarian did a few years ago where he's talking about how the fighters should get a percentage of the bets on them, like 3 to 5% because they're the ones putting their lives on the line. That is not exactly the quote you want resurfacing basically instantaneously the same day that you're in the center of a betting scandal. So this whole thing seems like it stinks. And look, it's a familiar pattern. Let's be clear. We don't know exactly what happened, Maybe he was injured. That was the first thought. Maybe he mentally checked out. I'm not sure. But what we do know is that amount of activity in that short a period of time, something's not right. And I guess the good news, if you're looking for a silver lining, the good news is as long as people that are involved in alleged suspicious activity like this are so greedy and blatantly stupid, it's going to get found out. Again, these sports books have entire departments to watch for this kind of activity. And if you're another MMA promotion for Delgarian, it seems like his career, I mean, how could you ever touch a guy like this ever again? Even if it does get proven to be maybe circumstantial in some way. It seems like the suspicion is not going to go anywhere. So maybe, I don't know, maybe he and Terry Rozier can get together and form their own MMA, NBA league. I'm not sure. Because it's hard to see anybody taking a legitimate chance on either of those guys anytime soon, even if somehow they are able to beat what people are saying against them. But I guess the bottom line, a little piece of advice, if you're going to try to rip off the sports books with illegal activity, you have to be a little less obvious about it. That's something we see in these cases is just the sheer greed of trying to cash in. But since we're talking about criminals, I guess that's probably not going to happen anytime soon. All right, that's going to do it for another episode of Gordon Damer on Sports. We'll see you next time. Make sure to hit that follow button, hit that subscribe button on whatever platform you're watching on, and we'll see you next time right here on Gordon Damer